You're not really family, Stephanie. You never were. Those words hit me like a freight train across the Thanksgiving dinner table, spoken by the woman I'd called mom for 23 years. The woman who raised me, who I'd sacrificed everything for, who I thought loved me unconditionally. But as I sat there, surrounded by my so-called family, I realized I had something that could destroy her perfect little world. Something I'd been keeping secret for months. And in that moment, I decided she was about to learn what not really family truly meant. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Let me take you back to understand how deep this betrayal cut. My name is Stephanie Rodriguez, and I was adopted when I was 3 years old by Patricia and Robert Caldwell. They already had 2 biological children, my older brother Mason, who was 7, and my younger sister Brooklyn, who was just 1. From day one, I tried to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the one who would prove I deserved to be there. Growing up in suburban Phoenix, I was the overachiever. While Mason was out partying in high school and Brooklyn was getting suspended for skipping classes, I was maintaining a 4.0 GPA, working part-time at the local veterinary clinic, and saving every penny for college. I got into Arizona State University on a partial scholarship, but it wasn't enough. The Caldwells made it clear that while they'd helped Mason with his tuition and would do the same for Brooklyn when her time came, my situation was different. You understand, honey, Patricia had said, sitting at the kitchen counter that summer before my freshman year. We've already stretched ourselves thin with Mason's expenses. You're so capable, so independent. You'll figure it out. Robert just nodded, not even looking up from his newspaper. The message was clear. I was on my OWN.so. I worked. God, did I work? I took out student loans, worked 2 jobs, and spent every summer doing internships that barely paid enough for ramen noodles. While Mason graduated debt-free and Brooklyn got her car paid for, I was drowning in expenses. But I never complained. I never asked for help. I just proved, over and over, that I was worthy of the Caldwell name. After college, I landed a job at a marketing firm in Scottsdale. The pay was decent, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. But then Robert had his heart attack. He was only 58, and the medical bills started piling up fast. Their insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Patricia was beside herself, and Brooklyn was still in college, and Mason was struggling with his own family expenses. That's when I stepped up. Without hesitation, I offered to cover the shortfall. We're talking about nearly $40,000 in medical debt. I liquidated my savings account, cashed out my small 401k, and took on extra freelance work to make the monthly payments. You're an angel, Stephanie, Patricia had whispered to me at the hospital, tears in her eyes. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're such a blessing to this family. For 2 years, I made those payments. 2 years of living paycheck to paycheck, of saying no to vacations and dates and anything that cost money. But it felt worth it because they needed me. Because I was finally the one they depended on. Because I was proving my place in the family. Once and for all, when Robert finally got back on his feet and they were financially stable again, I thought things would change. I thought maybe they'd acknowledge what I'd sacrificed. Instead, Patricia started talking about getting back to normal, and Mason began making jokes about me being too serious about money. Brooklyn rolled her eyes whenever I mentioned budgeting. It was like my sacrifice had become invisible the moment it was no longer needed, but I told myself it was fine. Family doesn't keep score, right? I'd done what family does, you show up when people need you. I convinced myself that was enough. The cracks started showing in early October, about 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was at Patricia's house helping her reorganize the garage, something she'd been putting off for months. Robert was at his brother's place watching football, and we were alone, sorting through boxes of Christmas decorations and old photo albums. That's when I found the shoebox, hidden behind a stack of winter coats. It wasn't labeled, and when I pulled it out, some papers scattered across the concrete floor. As I bent to pick them up, my blood turned to ice. Hotel receipts. Restaurant bills. All from the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess, one of the most expensive resorts in the area. All dated from the past 6 months. All charged to Patricia's credit card. But here's the thing, Robert hated that place. Called it pretentious and overpriced. They'd never been there together, not once in all the years I'd known them. I kept digging through the papers, my hands shaking. Movie ticket stubs for romantic comedies Robert would never watch. Receipts for couples massages. Wine purchases from the resort's premium collection, and then I found the photos. Polaroids. Tucked inside a manila envelope. Patricia at the resort's pool, but not with Robert. With a man I recognized from her real estate office, David Morrison, her business partner. In one photo, they were holding hands across a candlelit dinner table. In another, they were kissing by the fountain in the resort's courtyard. The timestamps on the photos went back 8 months. My mother, the woman who preached about family values and commitment, who'd been married to Robert for 26 years, was having an affair. And she'd been using money that could have helped me when I was struggling to keep them afloat financially, to fund romantic getaways with another man. I sat there on the garage floor, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, and felt something shift inside me. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was the realization that while I'd been sacrificing everything to help this family, she'd been living a double life. While I'd been eating ramen and working overtime to pay their medical bills, she'd been booking 5-star hotel suites with her boyfriend. I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Did Robert know? Did Mason and Brooklyn know? Was I the only one in the dark? As usual, that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times Patricia had talked about trust, about commitment, about what family means. About how she'd raised me to believe that loyalty was the most important thing in the world. About how she'd made me feel guilty anytime I'd prioritized my own needs over the family's. I started paying closer attention after that. I noticed how she'd disappear for hours on property showings that never seemed to result in listings. How she'd get mysterious text messages during family dinners and excuse herself to respond. How she'd started dressing differently, wearing perfume she'd never worn before, getting her hair done more frequently. The Saturday before Thanksgiving, I decided to drive by the Fairmont. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe there was an innocent explanation. But there, in the valet parking area, was Patricia's silver Lexus. At 2 p.m. on a Saturday when she'd told Robert she was showing houses to clients. I parked across the street and waited. 2 hours later, she emerged from the hotel lobby with David Morrison. They were laughing, his arm around her waist, looking like newlyweds. They kissed goodbye right there in front of the valet stand, completely shameless. She handed him something. An envelope, and he kissed her again before getting into his own car. As I drove home, I felt numb. This wasn't some brief indiscretion or moment of weakness. This was a full-blown relationship, complete with romantic gestures and what looked like financial exchanges. My mother was living an entirely separate life, and she was funding it while her family struggled. But what hurt most wasn't even the affair itself. It was hypocrisy. This was the same woman who'd lectured me about responsibility when I wanted to take a spring break trip in college. The same woman who'd made me feel selfish for buying myself a birthday gift when I was helping with their bills. The same woman who preached about family first, always thought I had the power to destroy her perfect little world. But I didn't know if I was ready to use it. Not yet. Thanksgiving arrived with its usual chaos. Patricia had insisted on hosting, as always, playing the role of the perfect matriarch. She'd spent days preparing the menu, decorating the dining room, and orchestrating everything down to the last detail. Mason arrived with his wife Jennifer and their twin boys. Brooklyn brought her new boyfriend, some guy named Tyler who worked at a startup and wouldn't stop talking about cryptocurrency. I came alone, as usual. I'd been dating someone casually, but Patricia had made it clear in previous years that bringing a random boyfriend to family holidays was disrespectful to the tradition. Mason's wife was different, of course, because they were married. Brooklyn's revolving door of boyfriends was fine because she was the baby of the family. But my plus ones were always viewed as intrusions. Dinner started normally enough. Patricia played the gracious hostess, Robert carved the turkey, and everyone fell into familiar roles. Mason dominated the conversation with stories about his promotion at the insurance company. Brooklyn complained about her professors and her part-time job at Nordstrom. I mostly listened, contributing when spoken to, playing the part I'd perfected over the years, but I was watching Patricia differently now. Seeing how she performed her role as the devoted wife and mother. How she touched Robert's shoulder affectionately while serving him wine. How she laughed at his jokes and asked about his golf game. It was all theater, and I was the only one. Who knew it? The conversation eventually turned to Christmas plans. Patricia started talking about family traditions, about how important it was to maintain certain standards, about the legacy we were building together. Family is everything, she said, raising her wine glass. It's the only thing that really matters in this world. That's when Mason brought up the topic that changed everything. Actually, Mom, Jennifer and I have been talking. He glanced at his wife, who nodded encouragingly. We're thinking about updating our wills, getting everything organized properly. You know, making sure the boys are taken care of if anything happens to us. Patricia nodded approvingly. That's very responsible of you. Yeah, and it got us thinking about family legacy stuff. Like, when you and Dad are gone, how do we want to handle the inheritance situation? The house, the investments, all that. I felt my stomach tighten, but I kept my face neutral. Brooklyn perked up. Oh, that's a good point. I never really thought about that. Robert shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. Well, that's something your mother and I need to discuss privately. But Patricia was already nodding, like this was something she'd been thinking about. Actually, it's good that you brought it up. Your father and I have been reviewing our estate plans with the attorney. She took a sip of wine, and I saw something in her expression that made my blood run cold. We want to make sure everything goes to our biological children. You know, keep everything in the bloodline. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Mason and Brooklyn exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable but not willing to object. Robert was staring at his plate, saying nothing. What does that mean exactly? I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Patricia looked directly at me, and there was no warmth in her eyes. No maternal love, no recognition of everything I'd sacrificed for this family. It means you're not really family, Stephanie. You never were. You're adopted, and while we love you, blood is blood. When we're gone, everything will go to Mason and Brooklyn. That's just how it has to be. The silence that followed was deafening. Mason was studying his napkin. Brooklyn was fidgeting with her bracelet. Robert still wouldn't look up. No one was going to defend me. No one was going to say this was wrong. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I see, I said quietly. So the $40,000 I spent keeping Dad alive, that was just, what? Charity work. Patricia's jaw tightened. That was your choice, Stephanie. No one asked you to do that. You literally cried in my arms and told me you didn't know what you'd do without me. I was emotional. I was grateful. But that doesn't change the facts. The facts, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the words. What facts are those, Mom? She leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw the coldness that had always been there, hidden under layers of maternal performance. The fact that you're not our blood. The fact that this family existed before you and will exist after you. The fact that you've never really fit in, no matter how hard you've tried. Mason finally spoke up, but not to defend me. Mom, maybe we don't need to get into all this right now. No, Patricia said firmly. It's time Stephanie understood where she stands. She's been living in a fantasy, thinking she's entitled to the same things as our real children. It's not healthy for anyone. I felt something break inside me then. Not my heart, that had been breaking slowly for years. Something deeper. The part of me that had spent 2 decades trying to earn love that was never real in the first place. You're absolutely right, I said, standing up from the table. I have been living in a fantasy. Thank you for clearing that up. Patricia looked satisfied, like she'd finally said what she'd been thinking for years. I'm glad you understand. Oh, I understand more than you know, I said, reaching for my purse. In fact, I think it's time everyone understood a few things. The look of confusion that crossed her face was almost worth what came next. Almost. I didn't leave immediately. Instead, I excused myself to the bathroom, my hands trembling as I pulled out my phone. The photos from the shoebox were still stored in my cloud drive, uploaded the night I'd found them. Hotel receipts, romantic dinners, couples massages. 8 months of evidence that Patricia Caldwell, pillar of the community and devoted wife, was living a double life. When I returned to the dining room, they were already moving on, like my entire existence had been dismissed with the appetizer plates. Mason was showing Robert something on his phone. Brooklyn was helping Patricia clear dishes. Jennifer was wiping cranberry sauce off one of the twins. Normal family life, continuing without me. Actually, I said, settling back into my chair, before I go, I wanted to share something with everyone. You know, since we're talking about family honesty and bloodlines and what really matters. Patricia looked up from stacking plates, a flicker of unease crossing her features. Stephanie, I think we've said enough for one day. Oh, but I haven't said nearly enough. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. See, Mom, you're absolutely right that I don't really belong in this family. But I've been wondering, do you? The room went quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different. Charged. Dangerous. What are you talking about? Robert asked, finally looking up from his phone. I turned the screen toward him. I'm talking about these photos I found while helping Mom clean the garage last month. The first image filled the screen, Patricia and David Morrison kissing by the fountain at the Fairmont Scottsdale Princess. Robert's face went white. Stephanie, Patricia said, her voice sharp with warning. Don't. But I was already swiping to the next photo. Patricia in a bikini by the pool, David's arm around her waist. Then another, the two of them at a candlelit dinner, holding hands across the table. What the hell is this? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. Mason and Brooklyn were staring at the phone screen like it might explode. Jennifer had stopped wiping the baby's face. Even Tyler, the cryptocurrency enthusiast, had gone silent. These were taken at the Fairmont over the past 8 months, I continued, my voice steady and clinical. Along with these hotel receipts. I swiped to show the documentation. Couples massages, romantic dinners, premium wine selections. All charged to Mom's credit card. All while she was supposedly showing houses to clients. Patricia's face had gone from pale to bright red. You had no right to go through my personal belongings. Personal belongings? I laughed, and it came out harder than I intended. You mean the personal belongings I found while doing the free labor you asked me to do? While reorganizing your garage because you were too busy with your boyfriend to handle it yourself? Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Patricia, is this true? Robert, I can explain. 8 months, I continued, because I wasn't done yet. Not even close. 8 months of 5-star hotels and romantic getaways. Do you know how much money that is, Dad? Do you want to guess? I swiped through the receipts on my phone, doing quick math. Let's see, hotel suites at $400 a night, dinners at $200 a pop, couple spa treatments at $500 each. We're looking at roughly $15,000 in affair-related expenses over 8 months. Brooklyn gasped. $15,000? That's more than I make in 6 months at Nordstrom, she whispered. Mason was staring at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Mom, what the hell? But I wasn't finished. You know what makes this really special? Remember 2 years ago when I was working 3 jobs to pay Dad's medical bills? When I was eating ramen noodles for dinner and canceling my internet to save $30 a month? Mom knew exactly how much I was struggling. She watched me sacrifice everything to keep this family afloat. I turned to Robert, whose hands were shaking as he gripped the back of his chair. Dad, while you were recovering from your heart attack, while I was liquidating my retirement fund to keep you from going into bankruptcy, your wife was booking romantic vacations with her business partner. Patricia finally exploded. That's enough. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I stood up, and for the first time in my life, I was taller than her. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. I know that you've been lying to your husband for 8 months. I know that you've been stealing money from your family to fund an affair. I know that you just told me I don't belong here because I'm not blood family, but apparently adultery doesn't disqualify you from the bloodline, does it? The room erupted. Robert was shouting at Patricia, demanding answers. Mason was trying to calm him down while Jennifer corralled the confused children. Brooklyn was crying, though I couldn't tell if it was from shock or embarrassment. Tyler was filming everything on his phone until Mason told him to stop. Through all the chaos, Patricia's eyes were locked on mine, filled with a hatred I'd never seen before. You vindictive little bitch, she hissed. You did this on purpose. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. I did this on purpose. Just like you told me I wasn't family on purpose. Just like you excluded me from your estate plans on purpose. Just like you've been lying to your husband on purpose for 8 months. Robert had sat back down, his head in his hands. Patricia, how could you do this? How could you do this to us? Robert, please, let me explain. David and I, we're just friends. These photos are taken out of context. I pulled up one more image, the envelope exchange I'd witnessed at the hotel valet stand. Is this out of context too? What's in the envelope, Mom? Love letters? Cash? More hotel reservations? She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation. Enough, Mason finally found his voice. Mom, this is insane. How long has this been going on? It doesn't matter how long. Patricia started. 8 months minimum, I interrupted. Based on the evidence I found. But honestly, it could be longer. I only found 8 months worth of receipts. Brooklyn was sobbing now. How could you do this to Dad? How could you do this to our family? And that's when Patricia made her biggest mistake. Instead of apologizing, instead of showing any remorse, she turned back to me with pure venom in her voice. This is exactly why you don't belong here, she spat. A real daughter would never destroy her family like this. A real daughter would have kept her mouth shut. The room went dead silent. Robert looked up from his hands, and when he spoke, his voice was hollow. A real wife wouldn't have been cheating on her husband while he was recovering from a heart attack. That's when I knew I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed their Thanksgiving dinner or exposed Patricia's affair. I'd won because finally, someone else could see what I'd always known. Patricia Caldwell wasn't the perfect mother and wife she pretended to be. She was a selfish, manipulative woman who'd built her entire life on performance and lies. I'm going to go now, I announced to the room. Since I was never really family anyway, I don't think anyone will miss me. I walked toward the front door, leaving behind the shouting and crying in 23 years of trying to earn love from people who were never capable of giving it. but as I reached for the door handle, I turned back one last time. Oh, and Mom? David Morrison is married too. To Linda Morrison, the woman who runs the charity auction committee at your country club. I thought you should know, in case you're planning to make this affair public when you divorce Dad. Linda's a really sweet lady. I'm sure she'd love to see these photos. Patricia's face went ashen. She hadn't considered that part of the equation. I smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time all day. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And then I walked out, leaving them to clean up the mess Patricia had made of their perfect family dinner. I didn't hear from anyone for 3 days. Radio silence from the entire Caldwell clan, which was honestly refreshing. I spent that weekend deep cleaning my apartment, meal prepping for the week, and catching up on Netflix shows I'd been too busy to watch. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxiously checking my phone for family emergencies or last-minute requests for help. The silence broke on Monday evening. A text from Mason, "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. About what? About what happened Thursday. About Mom and Dad. What about them? Dad moved into my guest room. Mom's been calling everyone, trying to do damage control. This is a mess, Stephanie. I felt a flicker of satisfaction reading that. Sounds like a problem. My phone rang immediately. Mason's name flashed on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, I answered. Stephanie, what the hell were you thinking? His voice was strained, exhausted. I was thinking it was time someone told the truth in this family. You destroyed everything. Dad's a wreck, Mom's having a breakdown, Brooklyn won't stop crying. Was your revenge really worth all this? Revenge. Interesting choice of words. Is that what you think this was about? Revenge? What else would you call it? You deliberately chose the worst possible moment to drop this bomb. You wanted to hurt people. I walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. Mason, let me ask you something. When Mom told me I wasn't really family, when she said I didn't belong because I wasn't blood, what did you do? Silence. I'll tell you what you did. Nothing. You sat there and let her say it. You, Brooklyn, even Dad, you all just sat there and let her tell me that 23 years of being your sister meant nothing. We were shocked. Bullshit. You were uncomfortable, but you weren't shocked. This is how she's always treated me, and you've all just gone along with it because it was easier than standing up to her. I heard him sigh heavily. Look, I know Mom can be difficult. But this wasn't the way to handle it. What was the way to handle it, Mason? Should I have kept quiet about her affair while she kicked me out of the family? Should I have protected her secret while she told me I didn't deserve an inheritance because I'm adopted? She was wrong about the inheritance thing. Was she? Because none of you said that at the time. None of you told her she was out of line. You all just sat there nodding along. Another long pause. Then, Dad wants to work things out with Mom. He's talking about marriage counseling. Good for him. That's his choice. But if he does that, if they reconcile, this whole thing will have been for nothing. You'll have destroyed Thanksgiving and hurt everyone for no reason. I almost laughed. Mason, do you hear yourself? You're more concerned about a ruined dinner than the fact that your mother has been cheating on your father for months. More worried about my revenge than her betrayal. That's not. Let me make something very clear to you. I didn't ruin Thanksgiving. Patricia did, the moment she decided to fund an affair with family money. I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken. I was about to hang up when he played his final card. Brooklyn's really struggling with this. She looks up to you, you know. She's talking about dropping out of school because she can't handle the family drama. There it was. The guilt trip. The emotional manipulation. Use Brooklyn, the baby of the family, to make me feel responsible for the chaos Patricia had created. If Brooklyn drops out of school, that's her choice. I'm not responsible for her decisions any more than I'm responsible for Mom's affair or Dad's reaction to it. Jesus, Stephanie. When did you become so cold? I became cold the moment I realized I'd been funding my own exclusion from this family. I became cold when I found out that while I was sacrificing everything to keep Dad alive, Mom was spending thousands on romantic getaways. I became cold when she looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't really family. Mason was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we all sat down and talked? What if we could work this out? There's nothing to work out. Mom made her position clear. I'm not family. So I'm acting accordingly. But what about Christmas? What about birthdays? Are we just never going to see each other again? That depends. Are you planning to invite the family outsider to your Christmas celebration? Or are you going to follow Mom's lead and keep it blood only? He didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. I thought so, I said. Look, Mason, I don't hate you. I don't hate Brooklyn or even Dad. But I'm done pretending this was ever a real family. I'm done sacrificing my well-being for people who see me as disposable. We don't see you as dash. Yes, you do. You all do. And that's fine. But I'm done pretending otherwise. I hung up before he could respond. The next few weeks brought a steady stream of manipulation attempts. Brooklyn texted me crying selfies with messages like, I can't eat, I can't sleep, everything is falling apart. Jennifer, Mason's wife, sent me a long email about how the twins were asking where Aunt Stephanie was, how confused they were by the family turmoil. Even Robert reached out, calling me on a Tuesday evening. His voice was shaky, older than I remembered. Stephanie. Honey, I know things got heated on Thanksgiving. I know your mother said some things she shouldn't have said. But we're family. We can work through this. Dad, she's been cheating on you for 8 months. I know. We're going to counseling. We're trying to work it out. That's your choice. I support whatever you decide to do. But what about us? What about you and me? You're my daughter, adoption or not. That hasn't changed. I felt a pang of sadness for him. Robert had always been kinder to me than Patricia, more accepting. But he'd also been passive, never standing up to his wife when she treated me differently. Dad, when Mom told me I wasn't really family, what did you do? I was trying to process everything. It was a lot to take in. You didn't say anything. You didn't tell her she was wrong. You just sat there. I should have spoken up. You're right. I should have defended you. It was the first real apology I'd gotten from any of them, and it meant more than he probably knew. But it also came too late. I appreciate that, Dad. I really do. But the damage is done. I can't keep being the family member who only matters when it's convenient. What can I do to fix this? Nothing. There's nothing any of you can do. Mom showed me who she really is, and you all showed me where I really stand. I finally believe you. The last attempt came from Patricia herself, 2 weeks before Christmas. A handwritten letter slipped under my apartment door, written on her expensive stationery with her perfect cursive handwriting. Stephanie, it began, I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive a mother's mistake. I never meant to hurt you. With my words on Thanksgiving. I was feeling defensive and said things I didn't mean. You are family, and you always will be. Please come home for Christmas. The house isn't the same without you. No mention of the affair. No acknowledgement of the financial betrayal. No apology for 23 years of making me feel like I had to earn my place in the family. Just a request to come home and pretend. None of it had happened. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and put it in my kitchen drawer next to the takeout menus. Not because I planned to respond to it, but because I wanted to remember this moment. The moment I realized that Patricia Caldwell still didn't understand what she'd done wrong. She thought this was about hurt feelings and family drama. She thought I was a rebellious child who would eventually come crawling back for the holidays. She had no idea that I'd finally learned the most important lesson of my life. Some families aren't worth fighting for. Christmas came and went without a single text from me to them or them to me. I spent December 25th volunteering at a local animal shelter, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was busy being the perfect Caldwell daughter. I walked dogs, cleaned kennels, and helped families find their forever pets. It was the most meaningful Christmas I'd ever had. In January, I got a promotion at work. My boss had noticed my improved focus and energy over the past few months. Apparently, when you stop spending all your emotional bandwidth on family drama, you have a lot more to invest in your career. I was making more money than ever, and for the first time, it was all mine. No medical bills to pay, no family emergencies to fund, no guilt about spending money on myself.